I'm Denise, and Brandy's on with us, and we have a guest.
Yep, we have Dustin back with us. He came on with us, I think it was February.
Yeah.
Sounds about right. He was our very first guest.
I know. It was fun. He told us his story. If you guys haven't heard it, it's really good. His story about him being in a wheelchair and being paralyzed. So go check that out. But today we want to talk to him because he grew up in the same area I did, and he grew up in a Mormon religion. So we kind of wanted to just pick his brain and, ask him about his life growing up and where he's at now. So Dustin, if you want to just kind of tell us, how did you grow up? Where did you grow up? All the good stuff.
I grew up in Green River, Wyoming, and so as far as the religion wise, I grew up. My mom, she was active in the LDS church. She still is today. And my dad, he went to a non-denominational Baptist church, and so I would do 2 weeks on with my dad and 2 weeks off, or 2 weeks with my mom, back and forth. And same thing, I had family, where Brandy grew up at, my cousins and all my family out there. So a lot of LDS people in my family, and so growing up that way, it's been at first, talking the first thing when I say LDS, it's I don't want to say it was great. It was great growing up. I say they have so much to offer. I think it's actually a really good church. I'm not trying to say anything bad. So that's how I grew up, though. But it was actually a lot of differences going to a Baptist church and then going to a LDS church every other week.
Is that Latter-day Saints?
Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, yeah.
Okay, got it.
Dustin, I never knew you did the 2 weeks on and 2 weeks off. I didn't.
Yeah, because my dad worked at the mines, and so that's how my parents did that. I'd go with my mom and dad back and forth. So every other week it was one or the other. And so I think growing up in the different churches, and growing up in a small town, I'm really good friends with, people that I grew up with that was in the Mormon church. I'm still great friends with them today and still talk. Some are still active in the church and some are not. And one of my best friends still today, I grew up with him in the Baptist church, and we're still great friends, So it's really I think it's really kind of interesting how it all kind of works out. But as far as the religion aspect of it, that's where that's why I think when I got older, I kind of separated myself from the Mormon church just because of, it didn't make sense to me on certain things. And
okay. Well, so when you were going to the Mormon church, did you have to do certain classes? Did you have to abide by certain regulations?
So, going back to when I was a kid, say probably when I was, I remember when you turn 8 years old, you're supposed to get baptized. And not to say that, so my sister, she got baptized when she was 8. But the thing is, and I didn't realize it back then, but now this is how I actually look at it. So the reason I remember, I can recall this, because I wanted to get, so before that, I remember all my friends, they would have these little briefcases, which they carry the Book of Mormon in it with them, and they'd have pens in it and papers, and so they could have all their little, it's just something they carried around, and I never had one. And so that was one thing that I wanted, to be a part of that group of people. And so, but then as the other kids started getting baptized, even my cousins out in Manila, my good cousins and stuff, they all got baptized. And part of me wanted to get baptized because to be a part of the group, right? But the other part of it is, talking with my dad and the other church is that was, what are you getting, you get baptized I'm saying in the other church. So in the Baptist church, I honestly felt this. It was, your relationship with God and the reasons why you're getting baptized with this, developing this relationship and having God as your Lord and Savior. And in the Mormon church back then, I promise, and I would still say it's probably this way today, because I've been around, they just don't teach that kind of stuff. But the problem is, when I was in the Mormon church, it was I remember talking with my bishop, and whether my bishop or whoever it was, but he was like, Dustin, do you want to serve sacrament? Do you want to do these things? And I was like, yeah, I want to. Well, if we get you baptized, then you can do this, this, and this. And then that was the same time that Boy Scouts would start. So there were certain things that I could do. I was actually part of Boy Scouts, but there was still this separation because I hadn't been baptized yet. And they knew, my friends, they knew in the Mormon church, they knew that I wasn't, baptized, and I wasn't a full, I guess, a part of that club yet.
Right.
So it really it made,
And all those boys were in Boy Scouts too.
yeah, for the most part, like, so the thing is, like, again, growing up in these small towns, I went to school with these guys, and they're all my buddies, they're all my friends, and so we would see each other at school and certain things like that. And I think for me, that's where I kind of, I would say, had a way out of it, or where it didn't have to bother me as much, because I would still go to church because my mom made me go to church with her. And as I got older, my friends, that didn't go to church, it's like, we all still hung out together. We all kind
I
of
see.
And then so there was a time in my life where it's like, you know what? I mean, I'm not going to serve sacrament, whatever, so be it. I'm like, I mean, it just didn't mean that much to me to go do that. Because then also when I was going to my dad's church, or not, the Baptist church, when I'd go to that was focused more on developing a relationship with Jesus Christ, the stories of the Bible, teaching from the Bible. Like when you actually hear a pastor speak, he has, notes from the Bible, and they're speaking to the Bible. Now he obviously puts it into a story so it can relate to the congregation. So he's preaching to us, which that's where I started to resonate more with a religion type, and started building my relationship with God. And then on the Mormon side of things, that was never the case. It was always about, then they had young men's and young women's, and that's where I kind of, I would say I never went to young men's much. I mean, a couple of times, but it was like I didn't go to that because I was getting older, and I'm like,
So I can attest to what you're saying about, that club. You wanted to be, I grew up in that same type of community, and we didn't go to church when I was young. We started to later on when my parents had found Christ. So then we went. But before that, all my friends were going to that Mormon church, and I'm like, well, I want to fit in. I want to go. So I ended up walking to church and went with some friends, and I did the young women's, went there, and everybody was super, super nice when I would go.
yeah.
But I'd only gone a couple of times. But you want to be able to fit in. But then once my parents started going to church, we ended up going to a different one. And I felt just fine, after that.
Well, the thing about, like, when you're saying it like that, so the young men's, the Boy Scouts, everything that happens in the LDS, I would say LDS, whatever, Mormon church, it's very positive. They're very family oriented. They're very, so there's nothing wrong, like, with as far as the teachings and things like that. But the part that I struggled with as I got older and I learned it, and I mean, as of right now, and this is, I can flat out say it's like, it's still a very healthy, a good family oriented church. But the way I've even seen it now is that's what it's more about that, and it's about being a part of this group. And if you're not part of that group, then you're not. And it's like, and as you get older as an adult, you can see it now, but like as an adult, like, it doesn't faze me. So when you start talking about religion, though, if you're talking about building a relationship with Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, and you want to pray to this, they don't ever even say that type of stuff. Example, like, they really start scripting themselves on how they live and how they do this. And again, they're always serving. Like my mom and her sisters, I don't want to get into too much, but they do amazing things. Like they serve, they help people out. And I'm not trying to say anything. I'm just saying, if you're talking about, your relationship with Jesus Christ, I don't think that's the right church for it, because they never talk about that. They never talk about, they talk about how the church is true and this and their president and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, you never hear about, the Lord and Savior. You don't hear about that type of stuff. And it's and as I got older, and even now, that's where I feel like they're, I would say, lost. When I say that, it's just because, I don't want to say lost. It's like, like, what are you doing? Like, so for instance, I don't want to get into it too much because I don't want to call people out, but I've talked to some people before, and when you start asking questions about the church, when you start getting religionative about it, the one thing they'll say is like, well, you just have to have faith. And it's like, well, okay, like, you can have faith, but there's a certain part of where it gets into it, and I'm like, okay, well, I have questions about this, and there's no answers for it. There's no answers.
Right.
Like, I would still sit down with somebody, and but even like their missionaries and people like that, they talk about. There was actually probably this summer there were some missionaries here, and they wanted to talk to me, and we were outside, and I talked to them for a bit, and I was like, you troubled young kids, like, you guys, all you're sitting there, your goal is to bring me to become a member of the church and do this and that. And it's like, but why? Why are we becoming a member? Like to be a part of this group? Or am I becoming a part of my relationship with Jesus Christ?
Right.
To want to save me from my sins and help me, I understand they want to help me and serve and do better people, but I'm just saying, like, the aspect of what they're trying to teach me or why they want me to be a part of this group goes all the way back to when I was a kid. It's like it's always trying to be a part of that group. And as you get, like I said, when you're older, you can kind of
It doesn't faze you as much. Yeah.
No, because
Yeah, I didn't
know,
notice it for me personally, but my parents noticed they were kind of shunned from the community.
Yeah.
So,
well, and I
When
don't
they
so
left, right?
well, they never
I
were
heard
part
that
of it.
before, too.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead,
They
Dustin.
weren't- I would say, well, no, I was gonna say, like, when you say shunned from the community, I would say, like, I don't think I ever, like, I always felt welcome. I've always felt welcome, like, with my family, friends, and stuff like that. They've always open armed me, even though they knew I wasn't baptized. I knew I wasn't part of the religion, like how they wanted me to be. But I say that, like, I guess I was fortunate for that. Like, my friends and stuff like that, they didn't single me out. But there were certain things that, what you mean, like, I mean, there are certain things that I just didn't get to participate in, or I just didn't, I
Right.
wasn't worthy. And there were some comments made, like, if you get baptized, if you come be, I'm like, so to me, it's like, how does that have any part of, never once was it about developing a relationship with Jesus Christ. Never once was about being
Right.
saved.
So you're getting baptized to become part of that religion versus being baptized as your outward expression of your faith in Christ.
Right.
Yeah.
And so are they more focused on works then than Jesus, it sounds like?
Yeah. And so, like, going back into it, like, that's where I talk about the Mormon churches. I always say, like, I think they are a great community of people, of serving, but I feel like they're just, but it's not religion. It's a, I don't want to say that word, but, it's a, like I say, it's a cult, man. It's like the thing about it. Have you ever seen, I always say, like, and it goes all the way back to, we've done some studies and some talks on, and I'd love to sit down with somebody and actually ask them the questions about it, like how this church developed up. But Stephen Koresh, remember him? No, David Koresh, I mean, the Waco, Texas.
Yes.
See, that's Joseph Smith in the making right there. That is exactly what that was.
My husband's actually brought that up before, kind of the similar thing.
Well, here's the thing.
Okay, so should I know Joseph Smith?
Oh, good question. Yes.
So Joseph Smith, I mean, this is the thing. Like, so I haven't studied the church. I haven't. I mean, this is what I recall. Things like that. So I would like, I don't want to say my facts are correct, but this is what I understood. And I've asked questions about it, and there's no answers to it, right? So Joseph Smith, so this is the crazy part. So he's the one that founded the church, basically. He's the one that started the religion of the Mormon church. He wrote, he's the one that wrote the Book of Mormon. But so this is the crazy part. So this is when I started finding out some stuff about it. He had the Book of Mormon. I believe, these dates ain't correct, but I believe he started it like it came out in 1824. Well, that was
I think
after,
it's around that time.
Yeah, well, yeah. So that's when he came out with it. But those dates right there, it's okay. Okay, so when he came out with this, and I was like, when I started, that's when I asked questions. When that date came out, I'm like, well, he came out with that in 1824, roughly. America, we had already founded America. I mean, we had laws, we had legislation, we had things going on there. I'm like, and as big of a deal as this was, why would you never hear about it in American history? Because, and this is just like a quick briefing of the story. So Joseph Smith, he was this guy. He was in, I believe it was like in Missouri, and so what happened is during this time, the Civil War is going on, right? The Civil War in our American country. So all these guys are out fighting in the country. Joseph Smith is back in Missouri. And from when I read on these articles of it, is he was back there being a nuisance because he was, there was single women, and he was, whether sleeping with women, doing whatever he's doing, he was causing problems in there. And so there was actually, and then there was a story where he said he would go to New York. I can't remember the city that it said, but he was going up to New York, like Rochester or something like that. But he was meeting this angel because this angel was giving him the translations of this Book of Mormon. And he was writing this book, and he did it for like 4 years. He would go up there once a year and talk to this angel because this angel was giving him the material
Book
to
of
write.
Mormon.
Yeah, but it was given to him in like Egyptian or something like that. Like, see, he was the only one who could read it, right? So he was the only one who could read it. And then, anyway,
Didn't they come to him on plates or something too?
yeah, like the golden plates. Yeah, and so that's what, like, so he got these Book of Mormon on the golden plates, and he trucked them across. I mean, he carried these golden plates over the mountains and stuff like that, and got back, but they got lost. They got lost. He never found them. And
Do you
but
know
anyway,
what? Somebody had told me, this is somebody that's high up in the LDS church, because I had asked this person, where are the plates at? Because we have scrolls, of the Bible. They said, where are these plates at? And this person that's high up said they are in spirit form now.
they're gone.
Really? These plates are in spirit form.
So see, I mean, like, so again, these are just like, and I'm just telling you what I know. And I would like, so if you were to ask someone in the Mormon church, I'm like, hey, I'm not trying to even knock the religion. I'm just saying, hey, these are questions that I've got. So this guy, Joseph Smith, goes up there, gets these golden plates. However, this one thing I always said too, he also met with a New York editor who wrote the Book of Mormon. Because I was told he had 300 copies of the Book of Mormon made. So this New York editor that never got credit for that, I always want to know who that guy was.
I'm Googling stuff as we go.
Good point.
Yeah. So like I said, when Joseph Smith had 300 copies made, right, and he's meeting his comrade people also in Illinois. So but what they're doing at this point now is they're like the David Koresh, they're getting people to do this following of, he's this Joseph Smith is speaking with Jesus and these angels, and he's, the chosen one, basically. Well, what happens is he's got to go back down to Missouri, and I believe this is what happened. There was like a newspaper company in Missouri that he burned down. He went and burned it down and destroyed it. Joseph Smith did. And so he got thrown in jail for it. And the reason, and then this is what I take on it, is because I bet this newspaper company was probably writing things about this crooked guy named Joseph Smith who's doing this, talking to these angels and doing this, but he's actually back in Missouri sleeping with men whose men are out fighting this war, our civil war, and he's, causing mayhem in families, because that's what it actually said. I read a thing on it. It said Joseph Smith had multiple relationships with other women. And that's, they do all this, like, for polygamy and however they had this, but, whatever. But these were still, he was causing mayhem in this town. But anyway, he got put in jail, and then he was killed in prison in Missouri, I think. But this is, and so I don't know if the name is correct. So before he was thrown in jail in Missouri, he was in, I think it was like Nauvoo, Illinois. So he brings these Book of Mormons, these books and stuff to, like I said, his group that he has created, and I think that was Brigham Young. And these
Brigham
guys,
Young is the one that came to Utah, so he must have taken them from there to there.
Yeah, so they got this group together, and so this is the way I look at it. And again, I could be completely wrong. I don't know. This is a question. So this is what I look at. So again, the Civil War is going on. These guys have created a lot of mischief, a lot of crap going on in, Missouri, Illinois. They have this cult together, if you want to call it that. They have this Mormon church group. And so these guys are saying, okay, you know what? We are getting out of this area. We got to relocate. So these guys go west, and they get to Salt Lake City. They get to Salt Lake area, right? And that's where they establish themselves at.
Yeah.
And but at that time, though, they established themselves there. And this is what I think. Why? Because they left the country. Because before, at that time, the Spanish War hadn't happened yet. So they're actually not in America anymore. They are in Mexico. So then the Spanish War happens, and we actually overtake that. That's when we actually develop that, and now they're a part of it. But so that's where they are. However it all developed, I don't know. But the question I have is, like, so at that time, though, you have Brigham Young and all the people that founded there in Salt Lake City, this Mormon group, and their idea is to, polygamy. So that they're sleeping with 30 women at a time, breeding, and they're multiplying by the thousands fast. And in that time, you don't have internet. You don't have any way to, know anything but what you know. So what
Right.
these guys developed is a group of people with this Mormon church, and that's how it really developed. And so that all happened within the United States, like after we were founded. And I said, like, there's some huge, and this is for me just spitting off what I've read and heard. And so it's like, if this is such a like monument, like such a powerful movement with Joseph Smith, and like, you would think somewhere along the line in American history that you would actually read about that. But actually, if you read about American history, I can't remember, I think it's called like the Massacre on the Mountain or something like that. But it's when not Joseph Smith, but Brigham Young and those guys, when they actually came to Salt Lake City, they murdered the valley because there was Indians in the valley. They murdered they killed everyone in the valley, so they took it over. So that's
something interesting to research.
American history. You'll read about that because that's a war that went on in America. But the thing is like, again, so I'm not even trying to say. So that's kind of how the Mormon religion was founded and started, and the book. I mean, not the Mormon, however you want to call it, but that's how the Book of Mormon came out. And it's like, all that right there is kind of what I know, and I've asked questions about it before, and like I said, I've had people say, "Well, Dustin, you just got to have faith in it," and it's like, well, okay, sure you can. I would like for someone to explain to me more about that, and so if you actually want to see some stuff, Brandy, on this, my cousin and I, we sat down and read this stuff. Go to
LDS. Can you say which cousin?
My cousin Rusty.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah, he's a smart. Rusty knows his stuff too. He's like, so that's where a lot of this briefing, because him and I have talked a lot about stuff, and again, it wasn't like, because our families are in the church and stuff, and we're never bashing them. We just started questioning the church about things, and I'm like, okay. So Rusty, he's like, let me check this out, Dustin. And so he gets on LDS.org. So this information he's pulling off of LDS.org. So it's not like he's making it up. And the way I'm just kind of rebriefing what I heard from Rusty, like as we talked about it. So it might not be exactly correct. And then, so like I said, when I told the story, that's kind of how I understand it. And again, now I'm not trying to say it's wrong. Hey, if that's what you want to believe, that's completely fine. I'm not trying to say it's bad. Again, I think they do great things. But as far as, devoting my life to Jesus Christ and wanting to be saved, and, that's, to me, that is not like I said, it's like a David Koresh thing, man. These guys it was a man who corrupted a lot of people, and, but back then he had the ability to do so. Now, that would never happen again with social media and stuff today. It'll never happen again. Not like that, because people can Google things. People can be, they can.
So what did Rusty pull off of the LDS.org?
So he went to that, and he was just reading facts about, like, so he, like, that I didn't know that, like, Joseph Smith, that's why he got thrown in jail for, it says something like, he had some people with him, whatever you want to call them. I can't remember I call them comrades, gang members, whatever, like his little group of posse that went and burned down the place and the cities. That's where, I really didn't know the cities until Rusty told me that, as he was reading this to me, what happened was, I said Joseph Smith would go to New York. He would go up to Rochester, I think New York or something like that, and he would go there, did it for 4 years. Once a year he'd go up there and he'd meet with this angel, and
Morion, or what's it?
Moroni or something.
Moroni. That's who the angel was. Moroni.
Yeah. And so, so he would meet with this angel, and, so that's, as we were reading this stuff. But, even here's the crazy part is I grew up in the LDS church, and never once did you hear about this kind of stuff. I mean, it's part of your religion. You'd think you would hear about how the Book of Mormon was developed. I mean, you do hear pieces of it, like how you do hear the story of Joseph Smith meeting with Moroni and carrying the golden plates, and so they do talk about that, but they don't. Once you start getting into details about it, because again, this is not like this is something that happened 200 years ago.
Yeah,
this is not like we're that far off.
Right.
So is it kind of like a rendition of the Old and New Testament? Like, does it kind of relate to the Bible much? I mean, the typical Bible stories, or?
So the Book of Mormon, to be honest with you, I've never read it.
Okay.
I've heard pieces. I don't know enough about it. I mean, I can't actually stand it. I can't. If you ever read it, like, or read pieces of it. So this is another thing. This is going to get off topic a little bit or off track, but like, so the Book of Mormon, like when I remember I had to read it in church. You know, you have to read sections of it, and it's like, ye shall, yea, yo, ye. I mean, it's like, who the hell wrote? Like, what is going on here?
Mhm.
And but the problem is, so one thing I like, and I even told myself this, and I was brought up. You know, my family, we would pray at dinner time, we'd pray at nights and stuff, and we, you know, we would do prayer. But there was times, and I actually recently told myself this again, because sometimes when you say a prayer, you think, you know, I'm going to pray for this, and this, you know, and sometimes it gets repetitive. And so that's when I feel like, so I told my mom actually this. I told my mom, because my mom, when she says the prayer, I can say it for you right now. I know exactly what she's going to say, how she's going to say it, and exactly, you know, how. I mean, she's a different person. She uses terminology that she never uses. It's like, we ask thee to take the other home in safety, and like the way they say their church, or I mean, this way they say their prayer, it's a script. And I said, you know, nothing. And so I was telling my mom one time, I said, you know what? When you say the prayer, Mom, you should use different words in it, like just different endings, and you know,
Make it personal.
Right, and you know, because I told her that, and I was like, you know, because I mean, I love the fact that she's praying, and I love that, but I was like, you want to. I mean, that's a good way to say it. Like, you make it personal. I was like, I want to pray like you're praying to God, like you're praying for us, not because you're, you're saying a script. And again, like that's my belief on it. I just, you know, I want to have more of a devoted, you know. And that's the thing too, is like, I don't think there's not a wrong way to say a prayer. I mean, you can sit there and just talk about however you want to. I'm just saying, I can just spot out from you when a person in the Mormon church gives a prayer, because they turn their entire identity into a script. And again, I'm still happy that they're praying. I'm still happy that's happening.
Right.
But it all falls back into what the Mormon church, I believe, is about. You know, it's kind of being about this group. It loses its focus on, again, when I talk about religion, it's my relationship with God, and I want to learn the Bible, and I want to learn the stories, and you know, there's.
Well, back to prayer though. I mean, God already knows what's going to happen. He knows what's happening in our lives. So ultimately, the thing with prayer is to have that closer relationship with Him. You know, talk to Him about everything that's going on in your life. He already knows what's going to happen, but it gives you that personal relationship through prayer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you know, I was just going to say, you know, I grew up Catholic, and I'm still Catholic, and we do the recited prayers too. And you can fall into a trap very easily where you're just saying it and not paying attention to what you're saying. So I try to really focus. And then I also try to like say my own personal prayer after that as well, because I see where you're coming from. Yeah. It's not personal.
You know, when you say it like that, it's also part of that. I don't want to say it like, so like, I'm just saying their identity. So when, it separates them, you know, like, you know, you definitely know they're part of that group. I mean, it's like my mom, you know, she uses term, I don't want to say my mom, because it's like, you know, but like I'm saying before, is like, when, you know, terms like, you know, be reverent and be things like that. It's like, again, I don't say you can't use these things, but it's like,
that's not her.
My mom, yeah, I'm going to say this. I'll use my mom, like, because it's not like that, but she's a different human being around different people. Mm-hmm. You know, when she gets around that group, they kind of change to more of an upper class. I don't know the right word. I'm just saying they're just part of that group, which is fine. I mean, and I'm not going to change who I am, you know, in front of a Mormon, in front of a Catholic, in front of a Baptist. I don't care.
Right.
Who I am, and I do everything I can for myself because of my, you know, again, like we talked earlier, like the teachings and stuff from the Mormon church, from a lot of churches, they're very good. But so it's like I said, I don't want to sit there and say, oh yeah, there's nothing wrong with the way they serve, nothing wrong with actually being a better person. But I mean, that this is a stigma they've had before, is I've heard people say, and I really said I haven't experienced it as much, but people think that, I've heard people say that Mormons feel like they're better than they're better, you know, they're
I've heard that.
And I was saying that thing is that it's because they're in that group or whatever. But like I'm saying, like with my mom and stuff, I don't feel like she's better than me. I don't think she ever treats me that way. I think she acts, or people will act differently. Like, okay, hey, but she's never been like, well, Dustin, you can't come here because you're not a Mormon. It's like, you don't have to say that. You don't have to say it. I already feel, like that's a certain,
And
I mean, like,
it's got to be hard because, like your mom, that's how she grew up. And same with you, Denise, those recited prayers, even though in the Bible it says we're not supposed to do the recited prayers, but that's how you grew up. So there's a hard, thing there you'd have to try to, work against on, what you've known your entire life.
I didn't even know that's in the Bible, that it says that.
Yeah, I'd have to find it for you. But then, with you said you really focus on those words and then you say your own, which that's great that you're doing that. We're supposed to do that with songs, really focus on what the words are instead of just singing them.
Right. And just talk to God throughout your day, all day long.
Yeah, well, another one. So in the Mormon church, they during the sacrament, you can go bear your testimony. Which, I mean, people that I've heard some stories in there, I remember, but that was also as for a kid. I remember I bared my testimony, and I'd go up there and I'd say, I know this is a true church. I know Joseph Smith is a true prophet, and name Jesus Christ, amen.
So bearing your testimony was not really your own testimony. It was bearing the church's testimony.
Oh.
Yeah. Well, and you watch that. Like, you go up to that church, I'm telling you right now, if you were to go watch it and people up there bear their testimonies, that's what they'll say. They'll say, I know this church is true. I know, the true prophets or whatever they want to say, on like whatever they molded into it. But it's a script. It's a script because that's what they say. If they really believe that, then that's fine. I mean, it's not, like I said, the problem is, I believe that they develop the way that you're going to speak and how you're going to think and what you're going to say versus explaining to you, hey, why is this church true? Why am I believing that this is a true church? I mean, I've never had anyone explain that to me. A church, actually. So you're saying the church? Are you referring to the building? Are you referring to the people? Are you referring
body
to
of Christ or the building?
Yeah. When they say no, and no one, I mean, they probably have happened, but I don't recall. But you don't ever hear someone get up there bearing their testimony, going, my relationship with Jesus Christ. I mean, I see that on Facebook. People will post on Facebook and say, how God has, done an amazing thing in their life, and amen, praise Jesus, these things like that on Facebook. In the church, they'll say, they won't be up in the bare testimony saying, God is good, God has changed my life. He's, and that's the thing. They don't use the word God a lot. They don't like to say Jesus Christ a lot. They don't like to say.
Well, what are their beliefs in Jesus Christ? Do they believe that he is a prophet, or do they believe that he's God?
That's what I was wanting to ask too. Yeah.
I think God. I think the Mormons think he's God. That's the thing. I grew up in the Mormon church. I don't know that much about the relationship with God. I know they like Joseph Smith. I know that. That they like that guy, and they like the certain things, and they do. Like I said, I mean, yeah, they do believe in God as God. They just don't give him the credit like they give Joseph Smith, and like they don't talk about it as much as.
But they don't believe in the Trinity.
No. And
so
and
then
they also
they wouldn't believe that Christ is God, because you couldn't. There's three distinct things. They believe they're all separate.
I'm on the website, and it says, we believe Jesus Christ is the Son of God, but they must not believe he's God.
Well, so the other thing too, which we didn't talk about, so they also have, like, when you die, they have layers of heaven, different layers you'll make it to. And so this is a question that I did ask my mom, and that was her answer. She said, Dustin, you gotta have faith. Because so my mom married my dad, and my mom was baptized. None of my family was baptized. My sister was, but then she actually had her name taken out of the registry or whatever she did. But my mom, so she got remarried to a guy, great family, and they got married in the temple, which is great, happy for him. And
wait, your dad got married in the temple?
No, my mom.
Okay.
My dad didn't get remarried. My mom got remarried to a guy, and they got married in the temple. Well, so when they got married, we actually couldn't even go to the ceremony because we weren't worthy enough, because we're not LDS. So my mom and I don't want to say the names. My mom and her husband, they got married, in the temple, yeah, and we weren't allowed to go because we weren't baptized, so we couldn't go past the gates.
Oh, wow.
And so they got married in there, which again,
well, when one of my best friends got married in the temple, I was in her wedding, but I couldn't go.
Yeah.
Oh,
well,
yeah.
It's just so on that side, like I said, I was like, I'm happy whenever she got married in the temple. Great, she got it done. But then you start asking the questions about it. So, hey, you got married in the temple. According to the Mormon religion now, my mom and I, when we go to heaven, we'll be on different layers. I won't see my mom in heaven. She'll spend eternal life with this man that she married and his family, whoever is, and unless I get baptized or I guess develop myself, but I'm not going to go into the Mormon church. I'm not going to get baptized. So therefore, I won't spend eternity with my mom. She's married out to a new family, and she'll spend it with that family, not me. And they're not saying I don't believe that way, but and I told her that, and my mom actually said it. She's like, "Well, that's not how it's going to work out, Dustin." I'm like, "Well, that's what your religion says. I mean, that's if you believe in the Mormon church. I mean, so now you're picking and choosing what you're going to believe in. You will not have eternal life with me in heaven because you'll be on a different layer, a different tier." It straight up tells you that.
So now another question stemming off of that. So there's the different layers of heaven, but there's also the belief in becoming your own god or goddess.
Yeah, there's. I mean, I don't know the exact. I've heard that kind of stuff too. Like when you get up there, that we all become, a certain power figure. I don't know how the depths of it, but they have talked about that too. So I don't know. Again, those are things when you ask questions about it, people don't like to answer because that's when they'll say, "Well, you just got to have faith." Well, faith in what? Those are my questions again. I was like, so how am I supposed to, I don't like, how do I, that's where, again, so as these conversations even like coming out with you guys, I start thinking about, I'm like, well, what a kook. I mean, like, what kind of religion are you actually in right now? Like, again, you start asking questions of like how the Mormon church, or not the Mormon church, the Book of Mormon got developed in 1823. I mean, my house was built I have an old house I bought. It was built in 1866. I mean, it's Joseph. I mean, these guys could have seen this house. These
Brigham
guys,
Young could have been there.
Yeah. Well, the Oregon Trail, the Mormon Trail runs right past through here somewhere. They probably stayed here.
They still do. So they still do that. July 24th every year they do the Mormon Trail. A bunch of the community, they get together in their covered wagons, get up, and they do the Mormon Trail. Actually, I think it'd be kind of neat to do. I'm not gonna lie, I think it'd be kind of fun. But
yeah, I'd love to do it.
Yeah.
The thing is, I would love to do it to like the Oregon Trail. All they're doing is reliving the journey across it. The problem is, what I'm struggling with is, again, as we talk about these things, when I have questions about the church, again, the different layers of heaven, the different, how the Book of Mormon was actually brought up, who Joseph Smith actually is. Again, in the Mormon church, they talk about how this man carried the golden plates, talked to Moroni, the angel, done all this stuff, how he's this amazing guy. Well, when you actually hear the stories, this guy was sleeping. Now, get down to facts. No, this was during the Civil War. He's sleeping with married women while their men are out fighting for the country.
And that's probably how polygamy got started with the Mormon religion.
Yeah, I was wondering. Yeah.
But it's a new, they had to rename the church, right, Dustin, to where they separated themselves from the polygamy portion. So it's now what is it now?
What's that?
What's the name of the church now compared to what it used to be?
I can't remember the old.
I think the Latter-day Saints is the part of the new portion of the church to distinguish themselves from the polygamy portion.
Okay.
Yeah.
If I can remember correctly. But
there's some things I don't know, but
I've studied a lot of the
Mormon religion. Crazy part, like I said, the crazy part is like, so again, the question is like how they talk about Joseph Smith, and they do this. This stuff is so in current history, like it's an American history. I'm just saying, from what if you don't hear it from the Mormon church, if you don't hear about that, when I hear about Joseph Smith, this guy's a nuisance. He's a thug. He's a person that got thrown in prison for being a punk guy who wouldn't go to war for our country, and he was back home causing problems.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and then David Koresh, he starts a cult, and bam. That's the basic of it. But I don't want to put it like that because it sounds like I'm trying to bash the religion. I'm not. I'm just saying, someone please tell me differently besides what you're going to read out of the Book of Mormon, because that's
so. Mormons or LDS, do they believe in the Bible? Because I know a lot of times they don't read the Bible, and a lot of things contradict each other from the Book of Mormon versus the Bible. Just like the God, them becoming their own God, and then in the Bible it says there's only one God.
Yeah. Well, the thing is with that, I mean, I will say again, like I know they did. So in those books, those little briefcases my buddies used to carry, it did have the Bible and it did have the Book of Mormon in it. So I know they do read from it, but I don't recall ever, maybe a couple times they might do something like that, but everything was, I mean, it was never, they even sing songs like Follow the Prophet, like I remember these songs, like they sing these songs that are not, again, it's not about
Jesus.
Yeah, it's not about that. It's always
Can
about.
you give us a breakdown of like, so I know you have your prophets, I know there's bishops, and I know there's, and then you have missionaries. What's all in there? Do you know?
Like the bishopric? I don't know
like you have prophets, like you guys have now, or not you, but the LDS have nowadays prophets, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know if they have more than one prophet. I mean, is that the guy? So, I mean, they have the president, whoever the president is right now. I can't remember who it is now, but he's the
Russell Nelson.
And who is it? Yeah, Nelson.
I'm on their page still.
Yeah, Robert M. Nelson.
Russell M. Nelson. It says he's the prophet and president of LDS.
Yeah. And so what he said. So actually, like I remember, it was a couple of years ago. They have conference down in Salt Lake, and all those guys, they go to it, and I know when they came back to it, my mom's like, "Well, we're fasting Facebook." I'm like, "What?" She's like, "Oh, Russell says that we need to fast Facebook." So Russell, what this guy has these puppets. I mean, I'm like, "Why are you fasting Facebook, Mom? Why?" I mean, you think that Russell M. Nelson would have said, "Hey, my people, followers, fast things that maybe you need to fast pornography. Maybe you need to fast, things that are corrupt in your life, not Facebook. I mean, Facebook, I don't use Facebook, so why am I fasting? So I get a free card? No, it was fast Facebook, or they can push things on how they want their agenda to roll, right? It's like, what, right now we are doing this, this, and this, and it's like, and the next thing you know, all the followers are doing this.
What was the big controversy with Coca-Cola? Do you know that one?
I don't know I don't know what the controversy is, but I do know this. I know my mom drinks like Coke, she drinks Diet Coke or drinks Diet Dr. Pepper, which I don't care. But I believe in the Mormon church, it says you're not supposed to drink caffeine. You're not supposed to. Oh, yeah. You're not supposed. Maybe that's what I heard one time. Like you're not supposed to.
That's what I was told. You're not allowed to drink anything hot. So like tea, coffee, anything that it may have changed by now. Anything caffeinated, you are not allowed to drink, or you're not. I mean, they can drink it if they wanted to, but they were recommended, I guess, not to. But then I heard, I don't know if this is true. We could research this, but something about Coca-Cola sponsored the Mormon church, so then they were able to drink it after that.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard some stuff like that too, like with the. Yeah, I mean, like that's. I mean, there's so many. I know what you mean. Like, there's so many different things, like with the Mormon Church of, like that would contradict each other, like you said, with the, Coca-Cola, with things like that, But again, at the end of the day, it's like then again, they're losing focus on my whole thing. It's like, again, if that was it's just like the Facebook one. When that was my whole problem with it. They talked about Facebook. Hey, we're going to fast Facebook. Okay, great. But you think in an actual a preacher, if I was given this from, and you talked about, hey, the negative things you see on Facebook, the stuff that's impactful. I mean, you could use that as an example, but it's like, what is separating you from God? What is keeping you from, focusing our life on being that relationship with God, being that better person like that, not fast Facebook for whatever reason. Like, I'm just saying, when my mom told me that, she didn't have a reason. She was just told to do that. So I'm just telling you this much. I promise you, if that Robert M. Nelson came out today and said this, and said, you know what, I want all of the mothers here, if you have a son that is over the age of 18, I want you to fast, and you go 90 days and not speak to that son. My mom would she would go out cold turkey. Guaranteed. Guarantee he can make a movement like that, no problem.
Wow.
I'm just saying, but there's no reason, right? Like I'm just saying. So again, when I talk about the Mormon Church, what I know about it is like I think these guys, I think that's just a far fetched thing to say because that would never happen. But I'm just saying, I've seen certain things like on how they do what they're told, not what they, not trying to build a relationship with God. It's more focused on that kind of stuff. And then again, I always say, like, they do great things. They help people out. They serve. They're a great group of people. It's just a lot of questions that have to be asked sometimes, or something. It would have been nice to actually get a Mormon on a. What we should do is get a Mormon on a podcast with us like this.
I'd love to.
Bring someone on here.
Yeah.
I mean, I can tell you, my cousin Rusty is a solid. If you ever do one, how many people could you have on a podcast?
I think you can have multiple, but Rusty would be good since he knows it.
Rusty's educated. So Rusty grew up in the Mormon Church, and he grew up as he knows. And when I was talking with him about it, he was right there, and he was getting facts. He's factual.
Okay.
He's factual about it. And he also can paint the picture. Rusty's funny. That's where I kind of got a little bit of my stuff. He's probably the best one you'll ever have because he paints the picture, and you're like, dang. It makes you think. It's like, okay. But that's where I'd say, I'm not trying to even say this is where I'm like, okay, bring someone on here who's actually LDS. Bring him on. I would love to have, but what I would not want to hear is,
have faith.
Yeah. just my question. It's not. I'm not trying to bash the religion. I'm just asking questions for it. Like, hey, someone just tell me what they think about, and it's like, here's the facts of, they're going to tell me parts of the Book of Mormon about Joseph Smith. Okay, that's great. But you got to remember, this guy founded this Book of Mormon in 1824, so there's actually more facts out there that we can get that you're not provided with.
What about a missionary? Get a missionary on here. Missionary.
Rusty talks to missionaries all the time. He loves.
They don't know.
He breaks them. Yeah, he breaks them. Rusty says that. That's Rusty will tell me that the other day. He's like, dude, these Mormons, missionaries. He's like, these kids are 18 years old. He's like, they have no idea. He's like, they're just doing what they're scripted to do, and Rusty will eat them up. And
all right, you talk Rusty into it because we know how he is about podcasts.
No, he would love it, dude. Rusty'd be a good one. Rusty'd be a good person to ask questions. Like I said, he's very educated on this stuff.
Because he did that podcast with you the one time. He didn't realize you actually published it.
Yeah.
I listened to it. It was really good.
Yeah, he is good. He's good.
And then he was mad at you for publishing it.
Yeah,
I got you in trouble. So, okay, I just have a couple more questions. Do you know anything like about the temple or like what the rituals are, how you qualify or what happens inside?
No, I'm not allowed inside them, I can't. Actually, I think I might be able to walk through them when they do the tours and stuff, I think so, but I mean, I don't know. I mean, I know they go baptize for the dead people and stuff like that there, but.
What do they do with the dead people?
Haven't you ever heard like when they'll get people together and you go baptize for the dead?
Yeah, you're right. I have heard that. Go baptize for the dead.
Yeah.
All right. I have one more question though. So I want to know, do you have your story of when your salvation story, or if you have the time of when you realized the truth?
About the church?
Yeah, about Christ. Like when do you have a salvation story or your, I can't think of the word. When you say when
you're like enlightened or have a revelation about.
What did you do in the Mormon church when you had to get up and you had your testimony? That word. Do you have your actual legit testimony?
Do I have one?
Yes.
My legit one or the Mormon church one?
Not the Mormon church one. I don't want that one. I want your testimony. Because I know some people have them, and I don't know that I have like a distinction for me.
I mean, if you like a distinction testimony, I don't know. I mean, I think my testimony is always changing, right? I mean, so I know that even taking it back to the day when I got paralyzed, how my life has changed from that day to where I've came today with 2 kids. I've gone through a divorce and I've raised these kids, and I know that my relationship with God has helped me out in more ways than not. And people, like we were talking earlier, people say, I think one thing that I've told myself even is in my struggling moments and even in my happy moments is like, people turn to God more when they're struggling, when they're sad, and I try to make sure that I'm turning to God all the time in my life for my happiness and sadness. And I think God has, God leaves signals and signs for us all the time. He's in our life every day, and I feel like it's just, for me, I embrace everything that I do. The fact that I get up in the morning, have this podcast with you guys. I'm going to go work out, go to the gym, do this, even the struggles, and I give God the glory and the appreciation for my life and everything that I do, because it's, and for all the great things that, my children, my children has blessed me with. And so I think my testimony is right now that I am grateful for Jesus Christ and as my Lord and Savior. And one thing I want to do is I want to build my relationship with God stronger and better. And so I can actually, I'd like to be one that can actually tell my story and be able to bring other people closer to God too. And more than anything, my kids. I want my kids to have that relationship with God too. So that's actually, it's funny, we're sitting right here. And so I've been reading this to my kids a lot when they're here. I have a little Bible here.
Oh, I love
we
that
have that
one.
Yeah. You have it too, Denise?
Yeah.
Yeah,
we have
my
that one.
son loves it.
Mine too.
Yeah. So, I read the Bible to my kids. We pray, and so just developing that relationship with God is, more powerful than anything. And it's, again, this is what I think, for me as a person and anyone else, is helping develop that relationship with God with all of us. I mean, it's something that we always got to focus on, because there's so many things that are pulling us away from that. In this outside world, there's so many things that are making it so, to take God out of our lives. And so it's really important that we keep that as our focus.
Stand strong.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, I agree. All right. Well, thanks for joining us. Hey, let's get Rusty on next time. Rusty, and then you got to find somebody. I have a couple people I could ask, and I think they would be okay. But if you have anybody in mind that you think would be,
we could ask around. We could ask around and see who might do it. It'd be fun though. Okay. It'd be fun to get some answers and some more clarity on it.
Yeah, because I'm interested in that too. And let's do it.
Okay.
All right.
Well,
thanks everybody.
Thanks for guys having me again, and we will connect again soon.
Hey, we'll have another one.
Thanks so much.
Hey, Dustin, stay on though.
Okay.
Okay.
After we end.